Hello and welcome back to Season 3 of the SecurityMetrics podcast. I'm Jen Stone. I'm a Principal Security Analyst here at SecurityMetrics, and I am stoked beyond measure about how many people have been downloading and listening and sharing this podcast with their friends. It's allowed me to do another season with you. And as we launch into it, if you have ideas for people you'd like me to talk to or topics you'd like me to cover, totally into hearing that from you. Would love to know your thoughts. And so don't be shy. You can email us, you can leave comments, whatever you want to do. I have to give a shout out before I get to our guest. Hunter, my producer, who I talk about probably way too often, sorry Hunter, built this great new studio for me for this year. And it's he's not happy because of supply chain issues, and we are behind on getting some of the things that he wanted to put up. So he's like, it's not even done yet. But it's so cool. If you're not watching on video, check it out. He did such a great job, and I love this new space. And we have some really great guests lined up for you for this season. And I wanted to start off with somebody that I found on LinkedIn, and I watch everything he puts out because it's hilarious. And it's also a good way, I think, to teach people about cybersecurity. And I thought, going to kick off the year introducing you to someone who I think you're going to find valuable as well. Let me read off my page so that I don't forget anything. His name is Ian Murphy, and he is the founder of CyberOff. It's a security awareness and training company. Does a lot of really hilarious videos. We always ask our guests for their certifications. You probably wouldn't care at all, but he has CISSP, FBCS, CITP. He has a long background in cybersecurity. And so I think you'll find that interesting as well. You'll have to have him tell you because I will forget. So we're going to talk about cybersecurity in terms of training, how you get people engaged in the topics, and what really good security awareness is all about. Ian, welcome to the show. I am so excited to get to talk to you today. A lot of people are familiar with you from your very funny presence on LinkedIn and other places. So I would like you to tell me a little bit about yourself. What is your background, particularly in the space of cybersecurity, and what kind of brought you to where you are now?
Hey, Jen. Thanks for having me on. Happy New Year as well. So my background in cybersecurity, I've been in it nearly 30 years now. I kind of got in it 93, 94 when I left university and I joined the Ministry of Defence. So I spent about 10 years with the Ministry of Defence, doing everything from the physical security side and working on cool stuff like submarines and all that type of stuff. And it was really interesting and cool, and got to meet some interesting people. Then I went into the dot-com bubble in London in just in 2000 with a small startup. And we just had a year of fun, just staying drunk. Drinking and being drunk will be a theme throughout my career, by the way. So
noted.
So
noted.
I don't want your American audience to think I need an intervention or anything like that, but I'm okay with it.
It's a culture thing. It's a lifestyle choice.
It is.
Okay.
It is. Us British have a totally different approach to drinking. And as an aside, I then went to move to Symantec. And I worked for Symantec for 5 years, and would go to worldwide sales conferences every year, which would be in like Nashville or Vegas or Florida or San Diego and Dallas. I've been to all those places. And the British contingent would come and get drunk for the week. And all the American employees would look at us thinking, all of you guys have problems. All of you guys need some kind of help. And we're just like, leave us alone. We're fine. So I think that's the cultural difference between the Brits and the Americans, right?
You guys are fine getting drunk. We would prefer our 12-step programs.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely. I don't need to talk about my drinking with anybody. Just get me another pint. I'm fine. So,
okay.
So yeah, it's so 5 years at Symantec. Really good times. It was during the initial time when Symantec went from being an AV to an enterprise security company, and then they went and ruined it by merging with Veritas. And then I left at that point because I think that merger, it complicated stuff for me in my mind about what they were trying to do, and it brought in a sales function that was distasteful in my view, to be quite honest. It brought in a sales at all costs rather than having fun and enjoying it and being a close-knit community. And then since 2006, I've worked for myself. I had a year in Australia in about 2012 or so, where I went to work for Dimension Data. And if anybody wants to know what the past is like, go and work in Australia for a year, because they're like social attitudes are like 20 years behind
but you
everybody
escaped,
else.
So
I escaped. I love the place and I love the people, right? But they say stuff over there, but I go, oh, no, you can't say that. And they're like, yeah, of course we can, mate. That's supposed to be an Australian accent.
I've only been once and I loved it. I would love to go back again.
Beautiful. It's a beautiful country with wonderful people, but everything wants to eat you out there.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
The bugs, the snakes, the spiders, they all want to eat you. So be careful if you go. So yeah, for all that time, I've then worked for myself. And I enjoy that because I realized that I'm unemployable by anybody else.
So by design and possibly desperation, you are now self-employed.
Exactly.
So in part of that process, you founded the business that you have now, which is CyberOff, correct?
Yeah, it's an unexpected turn for me, to be quite honest. In terms of, I never ever when I got into this career, I never thought it would end, or I never thought it would go where it's going at the moment. I've done everything in security, from the techie side to the sales side to leadership to CISO stuff and all that kind of compliance regimes and all of that type of stuff. But I never thought it would ever go into the entertainment side of things. Don't get me wrong. I enjoy a good song on a karaoke, right? I enjoy getting up in front of people and telling jokes. I did my first stand-up at 50 last year.
That's amazing. Congratulations for doing that. That can't have been easy.
Oh, I get two responses when I tell people I do stand-up. The first response is, "Oh, I couldn't do that. Ooh, that's a bit difficult to you," and they talk about it as a fearful thing, which I use in my routine, which is cool because I give them silly options of what would you do rather than doing stand up, and it's and then the other thing they do is they get interested in my genitalia, from the point of view where they turn around and go, "Oh, you must have balls of steel to do that," and I'm like, "No, the same as everybody else's." It's just
okay.
I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago. I was doing videos on LinkedIn to raise my profile, raise my brand, raise the Ian kind of nonsense. And part of that was just writing posts. Part of it was then I kind of moved from writing posts to doing articles, to doing blogs, to then doing the odd video of me ranting at a subject. And it started off with me ranting the terrible marketing that exists within cybersecurity, or the terrible phrases we use and things like that. And it just progressed from there. It's just a slippery slope from ranting about something to then dressing up as the Spice Girls to losing your dignity. That is a slippery slope right there.
You have gleefully slid down that slope, though, and that's actually is the reason that I was most interested in talking to you is watching these wild videos that inform people about cybersecurity topics. Some of them I'd watch 3-4 times in a row and just laugh. And I thought, I need to talk to you because, okay, I hate training. So I don't know, and probably most of our listeners do too. You get, usually we have the online thing, and you get this notice, hey, you have these trainings waiting for you in this platform.
Yeah.
And my response is, who can I pay to take this from? No, actually, just kidding.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I don't want to do the training. It's really boring. And you've taken a completely different tack. Tell me about the response to the humor in training. What do you think it brings? Do you think how do people respond to you?
First off, I think humor is one of the best tools to educate, right? We have fought for far too long in the industry, used fear. Don't do that, bad things will happen. Ooh. And we've used it to sell and we've used it to train, right? And I think that fear, uncertainty and doubt whilst it's an emotion to be used, it has to be used sparingly, because it exhausts people.
Yep.
People don't want to hear the skies falling in all the time, because our biases protect us from that stuff. We have inbuilt biases that protect us from a whole bunch of stuff, and that's one of the things. And I thought to myself, what's the thing that kind of helps me? And I remember most from, say, my school days or my earlier career, and it was always laughing. It was always the humor that normal people had in their everyday lives and their businesses that could then convey stuff to me. My first career was as a mechanic. So I did before I went to university and joined the mod, I did 4 years as a mechanic. And it was one of the best 4 years of my life, because it was full of middle-aged men who'd been mechanics all their lives. And actually their humor and the way they used it taught me and got me through my apprenticeship. The same as at school. I remember the funny teachers and the lessons they taught. For the fearful teachers, I only remember getting a slap off them or things like that when teachers could hit kids back in the 80s in the UK.
I lived through that, yeah.
Yeah, so and they did, by the way, for those kids who are going to school nowadays and watching this thinking, oh, teachers would never. No, teachers were absolute sadomasochists back in the 70s.
Yeah, some of them were pretty awful. They would come up with reasons to give you a good smack, or I grew up I went to school in Canada, and they would give the strap in that, take a strap and smack you on the hand with that, and it was awful.
Yeah. The cane as well. We would have a bamboo cane, and they'd smack you on the backside with it. And I'm not sure whether it was for their own pleasure or just to hurt you, to be quite honest. It was just and
not a good learning tool.
Days, Exactly, and it isn't. And it just got me thinking with CyberOff. The times I've learned are the times when I've enjoyed it, when I've paid attention to a presentation, is when the presenter has charisma and can hold you in there. And that doesn't mean that they're telling jokes all the time, but they have something about them. I see too many in our industry who class themselves as keynote speakers and stuff like that, who have the charisma of this wooden table that my laptop sits on. Right?
Snorefest,
yeah, exactly. And I always get from my family. So I'm the default IT support for the whole of my family and all my friends, right? And I get, is this a scam? Is that a scam? And I thought, what can I do to help those guys, to make it fun, to make it entertaining? And it was just a progression of my rantiness on LinkedIn that kind of moved into more of a cyber education. And that just seemed to take hold of people. That just seemed to... the feedback I got from it was largely positive. I obviously get some people who get offended, but those people would be offended at an envelope or a cardboard box or something like that.
I think there are people who want to be offended because it feeds some kind of emotion in them that they want to foster. And I find that's just so exhausting. I thought it was funny what you said about keynote speakers. I did give a keynote for the first time this year, and I got told that I triggered one person terribly, and they were very offended. And I thought, I'm not sure whether that's good or bad, but at least it's an emotional response. So absolutely,
yeah. And you don't have to worry about it. So when somebody says to me, "Oh, I'm offended at that," I first off, I worry if I have intentionally offended somebody, and I never set out to do that. I never set out to offend anybody. I never set out with the intention of singling somebody out and making them the butt of the joke. I'm always the butt of the joke, or concepts are the butt of the joke, or organizations are the butt of the joke. They're never a person, right? Because I think that's bad. That's bad juju to do when you're
absolutely
saying you're the one. But also as well, some people who do get triggered, you're right, they love being offended, or they love taking offense on somebody's behalf. And actually, I've learned through bits of experience that I can't change them and I can't argue with them, because they've got years of experience at this, and they'll never, ever change. They're entrenched in that view. But you're also right as well that you're getting a reaction. And actually, some of those people are some of the great people for the reach of your stuff, because they get so angry that they want to then rebroadcast it and say, hey, look what this guy's done. And I'm like, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I can't pay for that advertising, right? You know,
So,
it's just great. So I think with you have to invoke a reaction with people, good or bad. I see comedians do it, and they intentionally tread that line of acceptability.
right.
And you know, whether you think it's funny or not, there's a bunch of other people who do think it's funny. So my only suggestion is, when people do get offended, move on to someone else. Go and look at somebody else's stuff that's not going to offend you, you know.
Yeah, because there's plenty of people that are enjoying it, and it's not hurting you if they're learning in this way. So one of the criticisms that I have heard in the past is keep it professional, and criticizing something they call edutainment. Well, if you can be entertained, I think you're going to retain a lot more than if you are just blankly staring at somebody who's showing you those everlasting PowerPoints that I just get exhausted by.
I agree, and one of my other careers. So I've had multiple careers. One of my other careers was a professional sports person, right? So I was lucky enough to be good enough to play professional and semi-professional soccer, football in the UK, but soccer. So I was lucky enough to play with some really gifted professionals as well, and we worked as hard as anybody to better ourselves and better our craft. But we also had the most fun in the world as well. And I think when somebody comes at me and says you have to be professional, I'm like, explain to me what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean using a certain vocabulary? Does that mean dressing a certain way? Does that mean coming into work at a certain time and going at a certain time? Because all of those constraints have been shown in the past to not only generate decent behaviors, but also generate very terrible behaviors as well, right? You know, a certain Austrian in Germany in 1939 used all of those traits to mobilize a terrible approach to stuff. You know, the same as his Russian counterpart used all of those traits as well. That stuff can be used for bad as well as for good. So if anybody says to me, "Oh well, that's not professional enough for us," or the language you're using isn't, you know, with our corporate image, I'm like, that's cool. Go to somebody else who is not going to engage your staff, who is going to match your corporate image and allows you to tick all the boxes you need to tick, whilst your staff will still be caught out and disinterested in cybersecurity because I might say a swear word once in a while.
Yeah,
you know.
I think when I run into that that personality trait tends to be with people who lack confidence in themselves and their own abilities. They want to kind of hide in the what's appropriate patterns so that they won't be caught out as not knowing what they're doing or not being capable. And so sometimes it's just a matter of they need to feel better about themselves. They need to gain their own confidence, and that can be a difficult thing. Do you actually do training in person with corporations, or is it typically online?
It has been online of me generate either the content library I've got, which is nearly 50 videos now, and it's kind of growing 3 or 4 a month, or doing bespoke videos for customers, or bespoke material for them, where they'll say, "Hey, we've got a campaign coming up, and would like some posters or some this or some that." So I do that for them. However, the reason I did the stand-up last year is so I could offer an alternative to the yearly snooze fest, which is October's Awareness Month.
Yeah.
And it was essentially to have a stand-up set. So about 20, 30 minutes, and I've almost finished writing it, to have a stand-up set where I come and do that for them, and then stick around and answer questions. And if it's a big enough organization, we can do it 2 or 3 times in a day, so everybody's covered. But where we just have a bit of fun.
Yeah.
I asked them to heckle me, and things like that, where they can, and we get involved in it. And I'm writing it around the 3 Ps, which are people, passwords, and phishing. to kind of cover most of those bases, and I talk about the terrible approaches of people being the weakest link, or trying to make people the last line of technology when they've spent millions on technology that hasn't worked, or using people as scapegoats, and then talking about terrible passwords and terrible approaches to get people to change passwords and things like that, and things like you've seen the campaigns before. People have put posters out. You wouldn't share your underpants, so why would you share your passwords and things like that? And I'm thinking to myself, what perverts are sharing underpants? Who does
came
that?
up with this?
And not once have I ever looked at a friend and gone, would you like to change underpants? Would you, I've got a nice pair of Calvin Kleins on. Would you like to, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, that's not a common occurrence. I mean, I don't think it's common, but maybe there are people out there doing this and you and I just don't know.
Maybe I went to the wrong bank. Maybe
possibly.
That's what it was. Maybe that's all it is. So I've put that together, or I'm putting it together to offer an alternative. And then also I am releasing an app as well, probably towards the end of February, that will have all my content on. And the idea is to build a supportive cyber community around the content that people can use and show outside the workplace to their family and friends. Right. So it'll be a freemium version. So it'll be free for individuals, and they can download it as many times and give it to their kids to watch or whatever. And there'll be more stuff coming on. There'll be more podcasts and things like that coming on it. Or if an organization wants to use it, then we can talk about what that license fee is per head for them to use it internally.
So you already have a pretty hefty body of work out there. I mean, that makes it sound way more formal than it is. What do you have a favorite of the videos that you've put out so far?
It's almost like having more than one kid, isn't it? When somebody says, who's your favorite? Well, who's your favorite? I always do that when somebody says, I've got 2 kids. I say, who's your favorite?
Yeah.
There's got to be one.
I've told my kids which my favorite is. It's usually who's cleaned the house for me recently. They know that.
Good. Absolutely. I was definitely my mum's favorite. So, do I have? I
do. Should I tell you my favorite?
Go on.
The send up of the Rocky Horror picture show. I couldn't stop laughing. My audit coordinator literally walked in and was like, what are you doing? Like, you got to see this guy. So I love that one because it was just so good. And I love the one of you on donkey back, with the Western accent and the guns, because it was so bad. Like, it was painfully bad. Yeah. And the accents were just horrible. And it was wonderfully bad.
Which I'm as you'll have seen from my videos, I'm terrible at accents. I'm terrible at acting and stuff like that, right? And that's not a gift of me being really good at it and being really bad at it type of thing. I'm just bad at that stuff, and I'm okay with
genuinely
that.
Terrible.
I'm genuinely okay with it, and we'll talk about a new script with the team, and they'll go, right, we want you to do a Russian accent, and I'm like, I can't do accents, right? And you want me to do another accent.
Yeah.
So, and they have loads of fun with it. I think my favorite to date has been the Rocky Cyborg one, right? And only because I love Rocky, right? But I love Mickey. I love Mickey in the Rocky films, and just and he used to say to him, "Hey, Rock, you bum," and I just used to love, and I got to say that on video.
I don't think that's what he said, but I mean,
yeah. So there's 2 characters I've loved playing, Mickey, and Doc Emmett Brown in the Back to the Future one.
Because that was fantastic.
I just love saying 1.21 gigawatts. It's great, and they're the 2 I've really enjoyed doing. But I love doing all of them, and actually, I don't tend to watch them back. That's the problem. I love doing them, but I don't tend to watch them back. We were talking about this before we started recording. I'm ultra critical of myself. Yeah. So when I watch it back, or even when I watch this podcast back, I'll go, oh, I should have said that differently, or I should have said that differently.
Yeah.
And I never want to do another take on it, to be quite honest. I just let it go as it is, you know. So it's those have been my two favorites. I've got a Mr. Bean one coming out, so I think you guys got Mr. Bean over there.
Mr. Bean is one of my favorites. I have in my heart of hearts, I do have a 15-year-old boy's sense of humor, so I think that's why Mr. Bean is just classic.
No, I as I say, when we sit down and we talk about the ideas and the scripts, we've also got an idea of a billionaires boys club type of approach where we choose Bezos, Musk, Zuckerberg, Gates, bang. We'll go along Richard Branson. We'll go along all of them, and we'll have a security topic for each of them that's relevant to their success, right? You know, so Bezos will be cloud. Musk will be how you can get data erased off the internet of you looking like a fat balding teenager, right? You know, Branson will just be doing crazy stunts to raise his profile and how that can backfire and things like that. So we've got an idea of doing something like that where I don't even bother doing accents this time. I just use my Liverpool accent, and then I claim that these guys actually were born and grew up in Liverpool, and that's a little known fact, you know. So kind of play on that idiocy, a little bit. So we're looking at maybe doing that. And then you guys had Carl Sagan over there, right, as the scientist who explained everything. We've got a chap called Brian Cox in the UK, Professor Brian Cox, and he does that type of stuff. And I'd love to do a parody of that on cybersecurity. So he explains science really well, and he's got a very gentle voice, and he comes from Manchester, and everything's brilliant, and he talks like that. So I've got an idea to do something like that as well, but as an explainer. And maybe even tout that to somebody like Netflix or Apple or stuff like that. You know,
that would be brilliant.
I think that would be cool.
I'm excited to see what you have coming up for this year, because everything you put out in the past, very entertaining, but also educational. It helps people understand the cybersecurity topics that are, sometimes you start talking to people about cybersecurity and then they just kind of blank out, because it's not fun, but you bring the entertainment part into it, and it really makes it so it's engaging. And the information gets in there, and I just love that about what you have.
And the idea is that that's not a panacea, right? The idea is that's one thing in your arsenal of awareness tools, right? You know, so I'm not saying just do this and don't do KnowBe4 or Proofpoint or Fin Security or stuff like that. You know, I'm not saying any of that. But I am saying if you want to engage your people and get them involved in security rather than having to force them to do it, it's easier to do it if you give them something worth their time and their attention, because attention spans are short, and that's why I keep the videos between 1 and 5 minutes in length. So we're not expecting too much of our people, because if I said earlier on about using them as technology or the last line. I disagree with that. However, if you train them well and give them something that is interest, you don't have to ask them to be your last line of technology. Right. They're at the forefront of all of this without them being asked at all, you know?
Yeah, I agree with you, what you're saying about putting that pressure even on, or the expectation that people will be your last line of defense. We have plenty of technology to really back people up. And if there are any processes in an organization that allows one person to bank transfer $6 million to, you know, somebody that they think is the CEO, there are processes that need to be addressed, and not just the individual's knowledge. And yes, it's great to have knowledge with people. It's great to build that understanding. It's great to give that to them so that they can protect themselves from these ever increasing phishing campaigns at their homes, in their home email, their home phone, you know, whatever they're dealing with outside of the office is good knowledge to have. But relying on it as your last line of defense, I think is unrealistic.
Because we are stupid carbon-based life forms, right? And I don't say that to be disparaging. I include myself in that. We are all life-based, carbon life-based forms, right? Where where we will all fall foul of a scam and an attack, because anthropologically we are built to trust and help. And that's how you build societies, and that's how you build friendships and relationships and blah, blah, blah. And so you're going to get people who will look for the angle in it. You're going to get people who will trick other people. And I think we have to realize that with any process, the old people, process, technology triad, with any of that, yes, the people will always be a point of entry. And that's where people say that they'll be the weakest link. And I disagree with that. There'll always be a point of entry.
I like
but
how
actually,
you put that.
The other two are the important bits that so many organizations focus all their effort, money, time, and resources in, and largely get it wrong. Every single you do audits. I've done audits in my past. I've never come out of an audit and gone, Dave in accounts is rubbish, get rid of him.
No.
I've always come out of an audit.
Yeah, that's terrible.
I've always come out of an audit to turn around and say, hey, that process around that, or that technology thing around that is not what, or that, I may turn around and say that the way you train your staff is not often enough, or is not inclusive enough. But not once do I ever point the finger at those people, you know? So.
Yeah, I've heard things like, oh, well, Joey so-and-so gave his password to someone because he got phished. Really? Well, why did he also give him his second factor? Like, why didn't you have multi-factor authentication in place? What other, if all it takes to get into your organization is one given up password, then the technologies are not in place that need to be in place.
I agree. There's much worse with your organization than Joey giving away his password.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Poor Joey.
Although Joey always does that, by the way.
Well, if he would buy his round, I think it would be in his favor. But I mean, jury's out on Joey. Before we wrap up this call, it's just been a delight. Is there anything else that you wanted to share with the audience, or anything coming up with CyberOff or yourself?
I've mentioned about the app coming out at the end of February. I've got something coming out which is going to be cool, and it's going to be a podcast that somebody else is putting together, but I'm going to be a regular presenter on it. And it's with a guy in the UK who's making his way in stand-up. He's much further on than I am, and he's known by quite a few people as well, and he's been on TV for it. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be exciting. That's just and then also I'm excited to get the script finished and test it with a few people and see if they find it funny enough to then pay money for it, right? So I just love being in front of people and them smiling and them kind of getting something out of what I'm saying to them, So so they're the kind of cool things. Last year was a blast for me, even though it was in COVID times, and I know everybody's had their own story in COVID, but it was a blast for me seeing CyberOff grow from an idea into generating revenue. Mm-hmm. And hopefully next year it will, or this year rather, hopefully this year it'll take a next step again where we'll get better with our content, we'll get better with the scripts, we'll get better with the production, we'll get better with all of that stuff. And then I'll do the other stuff that lots more people are asking me to come on their podcast. So people are asking me to come and talk to their teams, and that's cool because as you can tell from this podcast, I love the sound of my own voice.
Is it? All right. Where's the best place that people can find you so they can hear more of that voice?
Find me on LinkedIn, Ian Murphy on LinkedIn. My picture is as a red curtain behind it. That was my first stand-up gig, so that was a picture there. You can find me going to cyberoff.co.uk. So that's cyber and off. Think of a swear word and then off and then .co.uk.
Okay.
It's actually how I come up with the name. I know it's childish.
It's perfect.
I know it's childish.
It's perfect.
But I get fed up with people using cyber to make themselves sound windswept and interesting.
Yeah.
And I really think it was techie geeks in our industry who thought if they called themselves cyber security that they may have a chance of getting laid. and that just hasn't
just not
happened
true.
before.
It's just not.
No.
Well, we'll make sure and put those links
yeah.
in on our webpage with the podcast. I would love for people to get connected with you. I'm personally super excited to see this app that you have coming out, and I hope to see you in person one day on the stage. And
awesome.
And thank you so much for coming and talking to me.
Jen, thanks so much for having me on. It's been a blast. I've really enjoyed it.
All right, take care. Thanks again for joining me for this very first episode of Season 3. I loved it. I think that our guest was just absolutely a breath of fresh air in terms of security training and awareness. Please go and check out. We'll have the links in the show notes and get connected with him on LinkedIn. Find where his new app is, because I think you're going to find a lot of value in it. Please join me again for our next episode. I mean, I have so many great guests lined up. I can't list them all. It's mostly because I forget. But you're going to like them, and I'll talk to you again later. Bye. Thanks for watching. To watch more episodes of Security Metrics Podcast, click on the box on the left. If you prefer to listen to this podcast, it's available on all your favorite podcast platforms. See you on the slopes.